and welcome to the Tracy Williams Show. Woo-hoo! I say that every time.
I love it.
Yes.
That's great.
So I'm here, as usual, with Bubby, Richard Benson.
At the headquarters.
At the world headquarters of LPC Pest Control.
That's right.
Okay.
Ground zero.
Yes. And then we have a special guest today, Ross Ward.
Thanks for having me. Really do appreciate it.
Glad you're here.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Yes.
And Ross is a lifelong friend. It's kind of weird. Because how old are you, like 32?
32.
Yeah. And I've known him since he was little. And when he was little, you probably didn't think, you probably never thought we'd be good friends.
No, at that particular age, it's kind of one of those things when you're the coach and a very scary coach. It's a different dynamic when you get to be 32 years old and brewing your own beer. And
we love each other.
Now wait a minute. Tell me about the scary coach part.
So the scary coach part
Let's
is...
go back to the beer.
No, I gotta hear the scary coach.
So playing Little League basketball, I played with Ren and all of our friends, and we had Rick, Uncle Rick, as I like to call him. He's family. As a coach, and he was a very intimidating guy. He's very, very intense, laser focused. We were having a conversation earlier about a moment that we shared. It was a bonding moment. At the particular time, we didn't know it. But
story.
Okay, what happened? What happened?
So, from my perspective, it was like late in the fourth quarter, and they had a lead on us by like maybe 10 points, 10 to 12 points. Basketball, yes. And there was a string or a run of points that we scored. We closed it within 2 to 4 points. Somebody made a dumb foul on that team. And then all of a sudden I heard this very masculine scream come from the bounds, the bench. And I quickly look over and I see Uncle Rick in full cock motion and just, boom, levels the wall. Shatters his hand. He's ejected from the game, and it is a moment that I will remember vividly, second by second, for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh! So that's great sportsmanship you were
showing. First of all, that's not one of my prouder moments.
Okay.
Yes. It's not proud.
This is before you went to anger management class.
No. After I broke my hand, it completely changed. I mean, I was like, "How stupid are you?" So after
An
that,
epiphany.
Yeah, and then
we're going. Break your hand?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, wow. He was in a cast for. I mean.
And I had to go, and we're going snow skiing in a week.
Oh no.
So I had to put socks on my hand while we're snow skiing.
But the best part is even this. So a couple of weeks later, there's a better part. I come over to the house and I walk and I see Uncle Rick in his chair and I can see him from the back. And I see his hand propped up with his cast on, and I'm petrified. I'm way too scared to walk by him, and I'm doing this little power walk to Ren's bedroom right past him. Hey, Ross. Hey, Uncle Rick. I mean, it was like, I just kept walking. I'm not stopping.
That is so funny.
But,
it seems like you have, you're much more laid back now.
Yes.
See, I've not seen you with that kind of anger ever.
Oh, it wasn't anger. It was just...
frustration.
No, just... In the moment,
competitive.
I was just crazy.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, as time goes by, these young guys that I coached against, I coached with, we all have bonded.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ross is Ren's best man in his wedding.
Aww, that's
that was
so
a great
great.
moment. Yeah, that was a real honor. It was real fun.
Back to the beer.
Okay.
What was it, about 2 years ago?
So
you came over here.
Well, I mean.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that the story is really organic. I mean, it starts back whenever I was a kid, and hear me out on this. My grandfather was in World War II, and he was, he did a tour in Europe. My dad was always a student of the war. And then I guess probably in 2010 or 2011, I went to my first brewery, which was St. Arnold's in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember walking out thinking to myself, how much fun would this be to have something like this, but with the World War II kind of twist or a World War II take on it. And I brewed extract off and on. It was never really like a passion. It was never really like something that I lived to do. But it was always kind of in the back of my mind that's something that I wanted to do.
Right.
And then I was not at a point in my career where I could focus the time and the resources on it. And then when I did that batch with Ren about 2 years ago, it hit me.
I got none of that, by the way.
You didn't even get to try it?
No, yeah.
Well,
So y'all just said, hey, we're going to make some beer.
We're going to make some beer. So we did 5 gallons. It turned out pretty rough. It wasn't.
How did you learn to do that?
I don't, just by experimenting. I mean, off and on with different batches and kind of doing your research. Now, at that particular time, we were doing extract, which is basically a quicker, easier way of making beer. What we'll get into here in a little bit with the 3 kettles, it's called all grain brewing. It allows you to be a lot more customizable with your beers, but extract, you don't have that kind of flexibility. Basically what you're doing is you're adding your fermentable sugars that's already been broken down into the brew kettle, you add your hops and you throw it in the fermenter, it's good to go. So at that particular time, that's what I was kind of working with. But of course it evolved to what I'm doing today with all grain.
It's amazing to me the science behind it.
Yes.
How
does beer become beer?
Right. So it's an art as much as it is a science. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, when you first on brew day, when you have your beer, it's not technically beer. It's called wort. Now you add your yeast to your wort. Your yeast then consume the fermentable sugars that create alcohol. Post primary fermentation is when you have your beer, and then you add your carbonation, of course, afterwards.
And then so when do you let it sit for however long, 4 weeks? Is that before you decarbonate or after, or how does that work?
So you said it takes 4 weeks to make good beer.
For me, yes. It's going to vary from person to person, from style of beer. So for example, a Hazy IPA that I make that I have with us today. Cheers, by the way, guys.
Yes.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Yes.
Uncle Rick.
This is good. It's really good.
And this is Ross's brew.
This is a Hazy IPA. I've named this one Open Bombay Doors. I named it after the B29. It's kind of a hop bomb. It's very hop forward, 0 bittering. So I did not add any hops at all to the boil. I did it all during fermentation. So, but to answer your question, sorry, I got kind of sidetracked there. No, that was all me. So we start off with a calculation. You're going to be wanted to calculate how many pounds of grain you're going to be using, what type of grain you'll be using, and other additions that you'll have outside of that. So for a hazy, I'll add several pounds of flaked oats and flaked wheats. That gives it that full body. Typically with like a Pilsner or a lager, like a Miller or a Bud Light, it's going to be a little bit drier, a little bit lighter. This is a full body beer, and you really taste it. So with this particular beer I have with me today, and I guess I need to kind of go through this first and what each one do, and then I'll get to the beer. But today, this is considered the hot side of brewing, which all in all, is one single particular brew day is going to last about 6 hours. That starts with organizing, cleaning, sanitizing, everything from top to bottom. But this is the hot liquor tank. Mm-hmm. This is the mash tun right here, and then this is the brew kettle.
Tim, can you see how big these are? Okay.
So this is a 20-gallon system. I can make up to 15 gallons of beer. Okay. Now, a second ago when I was talking about extract brewing, all I would need for this particular type of beer is this right here. Mm-hmm. I would dump the fermentable sugars in here, the hops, and then I would do my boil and then throw it in the fermenters. With all grain brewing, it allows you to be much more customizable, much more flexible.
Okay, Ross, tell me what's in front of us here.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We have the mash tun, the hot liquor tank, and the brew kettle. Mm-hmm. Inside here on a brew day, what we'll do is we will fill this up to almost the top, about 18 gallons of water approximately. Mm-hmm. And inside is what we call our Herms coil. Now this stands for heat exchange recirculating mash system. The benefit to this is that when you add your grain inside the mash tun here, there's about 16 gallons of water already in here. I have pumps that will remove the water from the bottom, take it to the Herms coil, and then replace it back on top here. And the biggest benefit is that your wort is never coming into contact with the heating element. Now, I've been told...
So this is a heat element?
That is, so the heating element actually comes in here at the bottom. I wasn't able to bring that with me. Some of the material, it's just really difficult and big.
This thing heats up.
Yes, this thing is going to heat up and you run your wort through that.
Okay. It goes inside this thing.
That's right. It goes through inside
the coil.
And there's water the coil's completely submerged in the water.
Okay.
And you're going to heat it up, and then once you run your wort through that, it's going to heat up your wort as well. Now this process.
Okay, so your recipe, that's how I think of it, is sitting in this pot here.
It's sitting in this pot here. That's right.
But only water is in here.
Only water's in there.
With the heating element.
With the heating.
So then this gets pumped out and goes through all these little coils around and around and around and around, and that's how it gets heated up.
That's exactly right. Now.
That's how you cooled it off when you were over here.
So.
Do you do that?
I have a.
Wait, I'll be quiet.
No. So I have now what's called, just real quick, it's called the accelerator. And it allows me to get my wort from 212 degrees, which is going to be straight out of the brew kettle right here, into my fermenters at pitching temperatures, which is like 75 degrees. But it allows me to do it like that. I don't know if you remember, it was very manual. We had to stir it. Yeah, it was a pain. This, I just run it. It's a counterflow wort chiller is what it's called, like the technical term. And instead of it taking 45 minutes to an hour, it takes 5 minutes. And I don't do anything. It just runs it through.
You bought some equipment since last time.
I bought some. Yes, absolutely.
But so you got it in here. You put it through the chiller thing. I mean the heater.
It's the heater.
The heater.
Yep.
And then what happens?
So that is going through a process where you are extracting the fermentable sugars from the grain, and then that creates your wort. You're going to want to get it typically at about 152 degrees. You can go a little bit higher, up to 158. And you can go as low as 146. Now, the difference is the higher in temperature that you go with mashing in, that's the term that they use, is you're going to create more complex sugars, which are more difficult for your yeast to consume. So when it's all said and done, your beer might be a little bit more on the sweeter end, definitely more full-bodied. This beer right here, I mashed in at about 155. So it was definitely on the higher end.
That's amazing to me.
It is.
It's very complex.
Yeah.
The whole system.
Absolutely. And then on the low end, you're going to have your lagers, your pilsners, and it does the exact opposite. So on the lower end, you're not going to have as much of those complex sugars in there. Your yeast can consume it. You're going to have a lighter beer, a drier beer, and that's where you get like things like Oktoberfest or maybe like a Miller Lite even. They're going to be on the lower end.
So it's a dumb question. Everybody else probably knows this, but an IPA versus a beer. What is that? What is IPA?
Is a beer.
But what is IPA?
IPA,
Indian Pale Ale.
Looky there, Uncle Rick. You're a real beer connoisseur.
No, I learned that in Baltimore. It's a long story. There's a story behind
there
that.
is a total story and history behind IPA. You could get into that. I mean, you could teach a whole lesson and course on it.
Okay.
But long story short, IPA is a certain type of beer.
Okay.
They're going to be heavier in ABV. Typically, when you think of beer, you think Miller Lite or Bud Light.
Right.
They're probably, I would think, in the range of about 4 to 4.5% ABV. IPAs will range anywhere from 5%, maybe up into about 8%.
You're talking about the alcohol content.
Alcohol content. Now on the flavor. Now on the flavoring side, it's going to vary. I mean, you'll have IPAs that are more on the bitter end that still have a good aroma / kind of hop forward flavor to it, and then you have your full-on hazy IPAs, which is what we're drinking today. Very hop forward. You can smell it, you can taste it, and it's very, very low bittering. So just a different type of beer with a lot of history to it. That's going to be a little bit higher in ABV and much more pronounced with the flavor and aroma.
Okay.
What's the beer from Ireland?
Guinness?
Guinness. Yeah. How do you get a port?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a totally different kind of beast.
That stuff is like you can't see
Malty.
through it.
No,
But it's
right.
good. I really like it.
No, it's very creamy. It's very
Yeah.
good. I haven't made a beer like that.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten
I was just
that
curious,
far.
'cause that's just a different animal.
It is. No, it really is. And what's crazy is that people look at a Guinness and they think very high ABV. It's not. It's very low. I mean, it's probably about 4%. But it tastes.
Yeah.
You can't beat a Guinness.
Ram
It's hard.
loves it. And tell us about your 101
Yeah, the logo.
brewery.
The 101st.
Yeah.
101st Airborne?
So yeah, it was kind of a play on that, and my brother likes to think that he named it. He tells me all the time that he named it. So it was 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, when I went to the brewery. I was mentioning World War II has always been kind of a thing that was ingrained in me at a young age, and so I really wanted to incorporate history into all of my beers, into all of my pours. And when I mentioned that to my brother, he claims, the story goes, I said 101st. So I'll give him credit. Grant, you came up with the name.
Yeah, Grant's a genius.
He's a genius, if something else. But 101st Airborne, there's a lot of history there. I mean, everything from dropping in behind enemy lines on D-Day to a Battle of the Bulge. I mean, they
went through
truly,
the whole thing.
the whole entire
Band of
process.
Brothers.
I mean, they were the tip of the spear. I mean, these guys were the
Yes.
elite of the elite. And when it comes down to brewing beer, that's the point that I would love to get to is brewing great quality beer. So.
Okay, so you name each of your beers based on that also, right? What
Yeah.
is this one called?
This one is called Open Bombay Doors. I named it after a B-29 bomber. They're also famous for dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the boxcar, and the Enola Gay. They came along much later in the war. Early on, they weren't exactly reliable, but of course that changed as the war progressed. We kind of worked out some of the kinks, but it was much more powerful than its predecessor, the B-17.
Okay, and so what are some other names of your beers that you?
So, great question. What I aim to do with this brewery is I want to bring in all viewpoints of history. So I would love to do a jalapeno ale, and I would love to name it after the British Spitfire. I'd like to do that one day.
Great. That would be great.
And I would love to do a lager. This is going to be like my next project. Lagers are a little bit more difficult to make, but I'd like to name it Give Me Liberty, and I'm going to name it after the Liberty, Texas, of course.
Oh, yes.
But I'm also going to try and incorporate all the veterans from Liberty County that died during the war. I'm currently designing the can, the label, as we speak. I'm going back and forth right now with somebody. And so I'm hoping to have these two beers finalized and really producing at a solid level here in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 months.
So people will be able to actually buy your beer.
Well, not buy.
Okay.
So this is a passion as of right now and a hobby.
Okay.
But you are going to be canning it, right?
I will be canning the beer. And so for friends, for whatever, I'll gladly bring down a 6-pack, 4-pack for them to try, see if they like it. And for right now, it's just a hobby. The day will come where I would like to monetize it, but that's the long,
Down the way here.
long.
So it's a hobby.
It's a hobby.
And you also go to competitions.
I do. I entered into a competition up in Dallas. This was my first one. I have not done a competition yet. We haven't gotten the results yet.
Okay.
I think we're expecting those here in the next week. But it was crazy. It's a weird story. I had a friend that reached out to me. He was like, "Hey man, there's a Celestial Beer Works at the brewery in Dallas. They're doing a competition. Submit your hazy." And I thought, that's not enough turnaround time. I typically take 4 weeks for a hazy. This was probably do like a little less, like right under 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and did it, and it came out okay. I mean, it's not my best beer, I don't think, but it turned out okay.
Okay,
So
but
we'll
that's
see.
fun.
We'll see. Yeah.
So if you're going to make a beer in honor of Hillary Clinton, what would you call it?
That's a
The Great Pretender?
The Great Pretender. You know, that's a good one. Oh man, I'm trying to think
Remember she
here.
said she was under sniper fire?
Yeah.
going from
That's a good military.
So, I don't
I was
know.
thinking something with emails, but
So I'm trying to
Sniper
think how
fire-
you could bring that in, like, almost under fire. I don't know.
that's a really good. I did not think of that. First thing that came to mind were emails, but
Yes.
I might try to
We're
do a play
going for
on
the
that.
military,
Go
then.
for military then.
Yeah.
That's much better.
Shouldn't have brought that up.
He brought up the political.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
that's all
Anyway,
good.
So
It's still-
a can steamer. How does that mean? You have a can that's open,
Okay,
put
yeah,
your beer in it,
yeah,
and then you steam it up.
right. So with a can, what you do is, you'll have two different things that you really want to add in there. One is CO2. You never want your beer coming into contact with oxygen under any circumstance. So what you see a lot of breweries do, they'll fill up the bottom of a can with CO2, and they'll have a device that's like under that CO2 layer. You can't really see it unless you're like on top of it, but they fill the beer from the bottom up with the CO2 layer on top. And then when it gets to the top, they throw the lid on there and they'll seam it. That's how they're able to keep it fresh with such a long shelf life.
idea.
Yeah. And then with kegging, what I'm currently doing is kegging like this right here.
Okay.
Came out of a keg. And my current system, what I have, 15 gallon, this is a Spike brewing system.
Okay.
And I have 3 fermenters that are 5 gallons each. So once I do a 15 gallon batch, I'll put 5 gallons in each fermenter, and I have a glycol chiller that helps regulate the overall temperature during fermentation. And then once that's done, I'll keg my beers. And all of it has to do, like once you close your fermenters. You pitch your yeast, you close the fermenters. They cannot, they can, but you have to be incredibly, incredibly careful with it. Me, I've gotten to the point where I do not let oxygen touch my beer under any circumstance. So from the second they hit the fermenter, the kegging to your glass.
It's all in a tube or something?
It's all in a tube with CO2. That's right.
Okay.
We flush all of our tubes with CO2, flush the fermenters, kegs, everything.
What happens if a beer gets oxygen?
It'll have something called oxygenation, oxidized. What happens then, like let's say this beer is oxidized, what you would be looking at is a very, very dark brown or even blackish beer, and it would taste like wet cardboard.
Okay, so this is a growler?
This is a growler, yes.
So that just means the size? Is that what that means?
This size, they come in different sizes, but they're gonna look almost the same, and it's really weird. I don't know all the economics behind it, but apparently growlers and 16-ounce cans are in major shortages. So finding one of these is like gold these days in the brewing space. It's really bizarre. I'm not really sure what all goes on behind it, but I think there's somebody put a patent on the design, and so they're very limited in supply. Yeah.
So Ren and I both bought growlers, and they disappeared.
Oh, man,
Did you end up with that?
Ren is something else. Let me tell you, that Ren is a character. He's a character.
So where do they go?
I really don't know. I have no. So okay.
He says he dropped them off at your parents' house.
So
and I was supposed to be getting some beer.
We have an inside joke about that batch of beer. What happened? I live in Dallas, so I can't come down to Houston that much.
Right.
And I told Ren, I said, hey, go by the house. You know, somebody will let you in. I have it right there. Just grab it, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
He never went and got it, but he always blames it on me. Where's my beer? Where is it? And I said, hey man, it was there about, a year and a half ago. You should have gotten it. I don't know how long ago that's been now.
You still owe me.
No, I do.
Well,
but
you got your beer right
Yeah. Cheers.
Actually
Yes.
drinkable.
Is it? Okay, good. Cheers again.
All right, well, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
And the beer's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks.